Stop the tape. Dr. Phil's voice cut through the studio like a knife. Every camera froze. The audience held their breath. In his hand, Dr. Phil held a white envelope that would destroy everything a 34-year-old man thought he knew about his father and himself. What was inside that envelope would shatter a family on live television. 48 hours earlier, Michael Bennett had walked into the Dr. Phil show believing he was there to repair his relationship with his father, Robert. Michael thought it was about old arguments, missed birthdays, the typical father-son distance that grows over decades. He had no idea he was about to discover the biggest lie of his life. The segment had started normally. Dr. Phil introduced them. Michael, 34, says his father has always been emotionally distant. Robert, 67, says his son never understood the sacrifices he made. Standard stuff. Family reconciliation. The kind of episode the show did every week. Michael sat in the guest chair, his father across from him. Both men looked uncomfortable but ready to talk. Dr. Phil opened with his usual directness. Michael, when did you first notice your father pulling away? I was maybe 7 or 8. Michael answered. He just wasn't there. Even when he was in the room, he wasn't really there. Like he was looking at me but seeing someone else. Robert shifted in his seat. His jaw clenched. Robert, what do you say to that? Dr. Phil leaned forward. I did my best, Robert said quietly. I worked 2 jobs. I kept a roof over his head. I don't know what more he wanted. But Dr. Phil noticed something in Robert's voice, something that didn't add up. Hold on, Dr. Phil said, his tone shifting. Robert, you said you did your best. But Michael's not talking about money. He's talking about presence. Emotional connection. Why do I get the feeling there's something you're not telling us? Robert's face went pale. His hands gripped the armrests. The studio audience leaned forward. Something was happening. Dr. Phil, Robert's voice cracked. I can't. You can't what? Dr. Phil pressed. I can't tell him. Not like this. Not here. Dr. Phil paused mid-sentence. The studio went completely silent. Michael looked confused. Dad, what are you talking about? Dr. Phil stood up. He walked over to Robert, knelt beside his chair, something he rarely did on camera, and spoke quietly. Robert, whatever you're carrying, it's eating you alive. And it's eating your relationship with your son. You came here for a reason. Let me help you. Robert's eyes filled with tears. If I tell him, I lose him. If you don't tell him, Dr. Phil said gently, you've already lost him. The camera captured every second. The audience was frozen. Subscribe and leave a comment, because the most powerful part of this story is still ahead. Robert took a shaking breath. Michael, I need to tell you something I should have told you 34 years ago. Michael's confusion turned to fear. What are you talking about? When your mother was pregnant with you. Robert's voice broke completely. I had an affair. The studio gasped. But Dr. Phil held up his hand. Keep going, Robert. The woman I had the affair with, she got pregnant too. Robert was crying now. She had a son. 3 months before you were born. Michael stared at his father, processing. You have another kid? Had, Robert whispered. He died when he was 6 months old. SIDS. Sudden infant death syndrome. Off camera, Dr. Phil made a choice no producer expected. Dr. Phil turned to his production team. Stop rolling. Clear the studio. Now. The crew looked shocked, but they obeyed. Cameras went dark. The audience was ushered out, confused and whispering. Within 2 minutes, only Dr. Phil, Michael, Robert, and a single camera operator remained. Dr. Phil sat back down, his entire demeanor changed. This wasn't a TV host anymore. This was a clinical psychologist facing a man in crisis. Robert, Dr. Phil said quietly, you've been looking at Michael his entire life and seeing the son you lost, haven't you? Robert nodded, unable to speak. And every time you looked at him, you felt guilty. Guilty that he lived and the other baby died. Guilty that you were raising him while grieving the one you lost. Guilty that you couldn't tell anyone because it would expose the affair. I couldn't even grieve him properly. Robert choked out. His mother moved away. I never got to say goodbye. And every time I looked at Michael, all I could think was, why did one live and the other die? What kind of father thinks that? Michael was frozen, tears streaming down his face. Dad, I never knew. That's why I couldn't be close to you, Robert said. Because every hug reminded me of what I'd lost. Every birthday reminded me of the one I'd never celebrate. I didn't pull away because I didn't love you. I pulled away because loving you hurt too much. But what happened next is something no one in the room, or watching at home, saw coming. Dr. Phil reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a white envelope. Robert, he said carefully, 3 days ago, you contacted one of our producers. You told them something you haven't told Michael yet. Is that right? Robert nodded, his face crumbling. Dr. Phil held the envelope. Michael, your father asked us to do something before this taping. With your permission, I'm going to show you what's inside. Michael's hands were shaking. What is it? Dr. Phil opened the envelope and pulled out a photograph. He handed it to Michael. It was a picture of a baby. 6 months old. Dark hair. Brown eyes. And a smile that looked exactly like Michael's. This is your half-brother, Dr. Phil said gently. His name was Daniel. Michael stared at the photo. His fingers traced the edges. He looks like me. He was you, Robert whispered. Same eyes. Same smile. Same everything. That's why I couldn't look at you. Every time I did, I saw him. Michael looked up at his father. For the first time in 34 years, he understood. Dad, Michael said, his voice breaking. You didn't lose me because you lost him. You lost me because you never let yourself grieve him. The envelope sat on the table between them, a 34-year-old secret finally exposed. Dr. Phil let the moment breathe. No interruptions. No commentary. Just father and son, finally seeing each other. After a long silence, Dr. Phil spoke. Robert, you've carried this alone for over 3 decades. You don't have to anymore. I'm going to connect you with a grief counselor who specializes in late-term loss and complicated mourning. Michael, I want you to meet with a family therapist who can help you process this. He placed his hand on the photograph. This little boy's life mattered. His death mattered. And your grief matters, Robert. It always did. Robert nodded, unable to speak. And Michael, Dr. Phil turned to him. Your father made mistakes. He carried a secret that poisoned your relationship. But he came here today to finally tell you the truth. That took more courage than most men ever have. Michael looked at the photo again, then at his father. Dad, can I keep this? Robert's face crumpled. You want to keep it? He's my brother, Michael said simply. I never got to meet him. But I want to know him. Share and subscribe. Make sure this story is never forgotten. Dr. Phil gave them space. He walked to the edge of the stage, leaving father and son alone under the studio lights. Michael moved from his chair and sat next to his father. For the first time since he was a child, he put his head on Robert's shoulder. Robert wrapped his arms around his son and wept, 34 years of grief finally breaking through. The single-camera operator kept rolling, capturing something raw and real. 20 minutes later, after the cameras stopped, Dr. Phil did something else remarkable. He brought both men into his private office, a place guests almost never see. On his desk, he placed resources. Phone numbers for grief counselors, information about support groups for parents who've lost children, contacts for therapists specializing in family trauma. This doesn't end when you leave this studio, Dr. Phil told them. This is where the real work begins. He handed Robert a business card. This is Dr. Sarah Chen. She helped me write the book on complicated grief. She's expecting your call. Then he turned to Michael. And this is Marcus Williams. He's a family therapist who specializes in helping adult children process late-discovered family secrets. Call him. Both men took the cards like lifelines. One more thing, Dr. Phil said. He opened a drawer and pulled out a small leather journal. He handed it to Robert. Write to Daniel. Every day if you need to. Tell him everything you never got to say. It's not too late to be his father. Robert held the journal like it was sacred. 3 months later, Dr. Phil received an email. It was from Michael. Attached was a photo, Michael, Robert, and a small gravestone they'd finally placed for Daniel. It read, Daniel Robert Bennett. Forever 6 months old. Forever loved. Forever remembered. The email said, Dr. Phil, we visit him every Sunday now. Dad talks to him. Tells him about me, about our family, about everything he missed. For the first time in my life, I have my father. And for the first time in 34 years, my dad has both his sons. When Dr. Phil tells this story in interviews, he always comes back to one moment. Not the revelation. Not the tears. Not even the reconciliation. He comes back to the envelope. That envelope sat in Robert's pocket for probably a week before the taping, Dr. Phil says. He carried his son's photo with him every day for 34 years, but he couldn't show it to anyone. The weight of that secret was killing him. And it was killing his relationship with Michael. He pauses, his therapist's mind still processing. We think secrets protect us. But they don't. They isolate us. They make us strangers to the people we love most. The episode never aired as planned. What the audience saw was a heavily edited version, the reconciliation, the tears, the hope. But the raw footage, the moment Dr. Phil stopped the show and cleared the studio, stayed private. Because some moments are too sacred for television. But the lesson wasn't private. It couldn't be. In the weeks after, Dr. Phil's producers received hundreds of messages from viewers who'd seen the edited episode. People carrying their own secrets. Parents who'd lost children and never grieved. Families torn apart by lies they were too afraid to tell. The envelope became a symbol. Dr. Phil started keeping sealed envelopes in his desk drawer. Whenever a guest came on the show carrying an unbearable secret, he'd pull one out. What are you carrying in your envelope? He'd ask. And who are you hurting by keeping it sealed? The question became his signature intervention. Simple. Visual. Devastating. Because everyone has an envelope. Everyone has a truth they're too scared to speak. That day in the studio, Robert opened his. And in doing so, he gave his son the greatest gift a father can give, the truth, no matter how painful. Michael has the photograph of Daniel framed in his home now. Next to it is a photo of himself at 6 months old. The resemblance is striking. Undeniable. People ask me if I'm angry at my dad for lying all those years, Michael said in a follow-up interview. But I'm not. Because he wasn't lying. He was surviving. And when he finally had the strength to tell the truth, he did it in the hardest possible way, on national television, in front of millions of people. He touched the frame. My brother died before I was born. But in a weird way, he gave me my father back. That's the legacy of the envelope. Not the secret it held, but the courage it took to finally open it. The willingness to risk everything for honesty. The belief that truth, no matter how devastating, is better than a lie, no matter how comfortable. Dr. Phil put it best in his closing remarks that day. You can't heal what you won't reveal. And you can't reveal what you won't first admit to yourself. Robert admitted it. Michael accepted it. And together, they proved that it's never too late to tell the truth. Even if that truth is 34 years overdue. The white envelope sits in Dr. Phil's office now, empty but significant. It reminds him why he does what he does. Why he stops the cameras when necessary. Why he breaks protocol when a soul needs saving. Because television is just television. but healing is sacred. And sometimes, all it takes is one man with the courage to open an envelope and say, "I need to tell you the truth." That's the moment everything changes. That's the moment families are saved. That's the moment Dr. Phil became more than a TV host. He became a witness to the power of truth. And Robert and Michael proved that even the deepest wounds can heal, as long as you're willing to expose them to the light. Years later, the ripple effect of that single episode continued to spread. Grief counselors across the country reported unprecedented calls from fathers who'd lost children and never processed the trauma. Support groups for parents dealing with infant loss saw membership double. The National SIDS Foundation received thousands of inquiries from families ready to finally talk about losses they'd hidden for decades. Dr. Chin, the grief specialist Dr. Phil recommended, later told him, "That episode broke open a dam. Men who'd carried silent grief for 20, 30, 40 years suddenly had permission to speak. Robert gave them that permission by being brave enough to break first." Michael and Robert still appear together at grief support events, sharing their story. They've helped countless families bridge the gap that secrets create. "The envelope saved my family," Michael says at these events, holding up the photograph of Daniel. "And it can save yours too. Whatever you're hiding, whatever truth you think will destroy you, I promise you, the hiding is what's actually killing you. The lesson endures. Love cannot survive in darkness, but truth, even painful truth, can set you free."